There is a plethora of channelers and prophets on the internet and in churches and in historical texts, and they are revered because of how they also present themselves. Many of them, and I argue that most of them, consider themselves as special, as chosen, as maybe the only person who can give a specific message to save the masses. And the thing is that we are indoctrinated since youth, especially in religion, to be of service. And sure, it's great to serve one another, help one another. But when we are of service as our life's mission, and we are not enough ourselves, and we must have this other entity, being, spirit, whatever, come into us as a vessel of God, that is when there's a problem. There are some people who don't really have the ego and who don't want to be famous or a prophet or anything like that, but it just kind of happened to them, including my mother. Of course, because of her indoctrination, she was open and willing to be that type of a servant, but she didn't have the ego that came with it. She didn't want to really be put out there in such a way. She didn't want to be controlled, and she didn't really understand what it all entailed to be a prophet. And at a very early age, she did start receiving prophecies. Instead of going through much of it here, she and I made a documentary film explaining her path receiving prophecies and what that did to her, and also what that did to me as her daughter, because I grew up in this situation from day one. And it's not her natural ability, but something was activated in her. And I explain in the film the differences between a natural ability and what is activated from something external. To clarify, my mother is not a prophet anymore, and she hasn't been for many years. She has learned to go inward with her own natural abilities, and we all have our own inner construction. But something with her has learned to operate out of her delta wave while being fully awake. And it's this own inner process that I do mention in my book and explain many more things more in depth than in this film. This entire film is based on my book, Eternal Humans and the Finite Gods. And below this video, you can see the official description for the film and the link where you can actually purchase it and watch it. And I created accurate subtitles so that people can really see what we're saying and not be confused. So what I'm going to do for you soon is show you 9 minutes of clips that my mother and I think give a good glimpse into what the content of the documentary is about and the feel of what it is. And I really like the music and the scenery that I chose for the film, and how everything just fits together with the energy my mother and I are conveying. And it's really special to us. We do show actual prophecies that my mother received and other extra worldly communications as well. There were stages, because my mother and I really started analyzing the language of these messages and also what it was doing to her and doing to me. And we were increasingly disempowered over time instead of actually empowered. And thank goodness we acted upon our inner knowing, our inner sense of self, to say, no, this is enough. But we didn't really know what to go toward. We didn't know really what was ahead. And we explain how that was also difficult. Even though it was liberating, it was wonderful to just have an open future to see what can we find, what else is there. So we just went through this very long process until we really do think that we found actual eternal energy. And not only just eternal energy, because there's many realms of that actually in their own compositions, but what is even before that, what is even before creation, what is actual life, starting the process of other life to exist. We are presenting in this film a new understanding of the origin of life. And we just ask that you ponder it and see if you can resonate with that as well. And just keep going in yourself and figuring things out. What is the origin of life? Has it always existed? Could there really be eternal life and consciousness beyond our universe? As human beings, we can begin to answer these questions by exploring our own deep consciousness and pure intention toward truth. In this documentary, I, Theresa Talea, an American author, and my mother, Linda Shapah, an ex-Christian prophet, share how we each used our integrated abilities to leave Christianity and find insights and energies not known in organized religions and New Age spiritualities. After years of discernment, we began to understand and gently connect with a pure and simple energy essence that gave us a sense of calm, purity, and freedom. This essence gives itself a title. All that is the pure essence. It is not a god, not an entity, and not a creator. It is an eternal, conscious essence that exists before creation and independently of creation. It is pure, living consciousness. We knew there had to be a source. And what is a source? Well, there's many different sources. Something for me with a source, because of my own experience and contemplation of life, had to be really, really pure and enduring and consistent and beyond, because we don't have that here. Let's be honest, it's not here. But we somehow know it exists. Something in us just knows. So it's like we're finding, and it's like we're going through just darkness at times. And so all we had, well, if we left conventional religion, it's the New Age side researching, and they have their own belief systems too. And so I started delving into that, but that didn't resonate either. It still had a set hierarchy. It still had its own spin on it. So we just, with each new layer and even her own little veils that were dropping, the closer she was getting to something really pure, we had to evaluate what we really thought and what we really believed. And so we knew, well, this beginning source, it is conscious. It doesn't have the forcefulness, this agenda, this power trip, this authoritative energy, this hierarchical energy. Even though it's in the beginning, I just felt it's simple. It's not all this complex and emotionalism with all these gods. They're emotional. Again, they're like us. And we're made in their image. Well, there's no image with this. There's no visual of this. It's even beyond light. Like light is already a creation. If this is before creation, it doesn't involve creation. It's something so different. My mother and I went through many steps to find a pure connection with the all that is the pure essence. Let us now delve into our experiences to learn the context of this discovery.
I was raised Catholic, and I viewed God as a all-powerful, omnipresent, all-knowing, all-seeing kind of spirit.
And were these still kind of coming through your mind? Like these communications, they weren't really through your own core. It was...
Right. I didn't know much about the core, and I had to learn. And my mind was still being controlled in some way, but it tried to sound more like, oh, we're gonna get there with you, but you got to recognize us first. once you get involved with the entities, they don't forget. They keep themselves constantly aware of where you are and who you are. And you cannot grow that way. You will be used, you'll be manipulated, you'll be, as I was. And bad thing about it is that they made me believe that I was doing the right thing. I was being a servant for God and I was helping others. And when that became clear to me that it was not what I was supposed to be doing, and I went along with it thinking it was right, I was duped, and I sometimes had gone through many days of how could I be so stupid or gullible to accept this type of situation? I felt like I didn't have any choice, but I do. And that is what's on the other side of religion: choice, freedom, and your will. And you can use them all.
When we finally realized we can do something, apart from something telling us what to do, we literally did something. And so I see each type of realm and stage of creation having its own essences and structures coexisting and still being distinct, but in those early stages, they can communicate better and they have less boundary that we have here, but they still have their own separation. And so then as creation flows, it gets more complex and diverse and can go in different ways and however it can flow. But because of the eternal nature, each being is its own unit, it has its own complete wholeness that can rejuvenate if it's tired in any way. It's not drawing necessarily from an outside, but yet it's still connected to what's beyond. These light beings that say, oh, I am of the light, with what the messages that were coming to you for all these times before said, I am a larger portion of the light, go toward the light. And with the ascended masters, how they have light to their crowns and everything. Just because something is light doesn't mean it's a good light, doesn't mean it's an eternal light. It's an artificial construct, just like compact fluorescent light bulbs. It needs to gain electricity from another source to have light. And so what I call these things a phantom, where it's a copy of what's eternal, but it's a distorted copy. It's not the original, and it has something removed. And then the more stages you remove, it's like you can't just like create a completely dead thing off of a completely light, eternal thing. It's in stages. It's more and more fragmented, more and more decayed. We go in ourselves, let's think about it. What is really pure? What is so truly pure that you can sense? Are there tons of words with that? Are there, tons of different energies with that? I don't feel that. It's really calm to me. And thus, when you connect with that, it just brings me just to a state of truly being. Can I matter just by existing? And I do. And we all do. And I feel that space between me and everything else. And I walk around and I appreciate the trees and each tree, each little animal, each little plant. I remember so many positive experiences with you. It's very important that when we have pure intention and do not waver, it has like an inbuilt protective mechanism, even if something external is trying to knock us down for its self-serving agenda. That's what power dynamics do. Put the other person down in order to lift up oneself. It's vampiric in nature because the controlling entity is choosing to not develop its own life-supporting qualities, but instead chooses to continue being an empty shell that takes from others for a small semblance of so-called life, which isn't life. When there are energetically sensitive beings and caring beings just living amongst each other, supporting life and love, there won't be that type of forcefulness. And then they will really understand what my mother and I are conveying in this video. Many people aren't understanding it yet because of how they're still applying their religious ideas and dynamics. Those dynamics, they don't apply in this paradigm.